You're listening to The Inspired Guide, episode 43. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. This is Darlene Victoria, and I'm glad to be back. And man, today's episode is brought to you by the letter R, as in renovation. Yes, it's still going on, so you're still going to hear that background noise. And gosh, everybody, this 30-day challenge is a challenge. I haven't been perfect. I haven't been producing episodes daily, but for someone who has not produced an episode for this podcast, The Inspired Guide, in over a year, I'm feeling pretty good about my progress. I've had at least 10 episodes now. I still feel the momentum and the motivation and the inspiration to keep going. So, yay. Today I am answering the question, what is your biggest pet peeve in podcasting? And while I don't really have too many pet peeves, I think the biggest one, and it sounds so silly, is that what you're listening to right now is a podcast episode. And it's just such a silly little pet peeve. But when people could call it a podcast, you have a book and then you have chapters of a book. And so when you're reading a specific chapter, you say, oh yeah, I'm reading this book. And right now I'm on the chapter about blah, 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 blah. Well, that's the same thing. I'm listening to this podcast, and this particular episode is about blah, blah, blah. So when people can refer to a specific podcast episode as a podcast, that just really is just a pet peeve of mine. It sounds so silly and so contrived, and it doesn't make any sense. But that's my biggest pet peeve. And then I think the second one is introduction to entry. Starting a podcast can be as easy or as hard as you make it out to be. And I think some producers and people in the podcasting industry get so hell-bent on the sound of a podcast, which yes, I think you need to have good sound because otherwise it's going to be really, really hard on your listeners' ears and they're not going to tune in. But you don't need to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. You don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do a proper room treatment for recording your audio. There are best practices that you can utilize, microphones that you can purchase that are $100 or less. So you do not need to break the bank with starting a podcast. So that's another pet peeve, and I'm starting to sound a little snarky. So I'm going to stop there. Those are my pet peeves of podcasting. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode. And so, until next time, this is Darlene Victoria signing out.